Welcome to Impress Me! Life is Feudal! I know I said I was only going to do early access games, but Life is Feudal is pretty much as early access as it gets without being labeled early access. We were originally going to do a long Let's Play series on this, but we ran into so many issues with it that we just couldn't. There's probably 5 or 6 episodes worth of footage that I get to dig through to give you this Impress Me. And unfortunately, on the Steam store, this is not labeled early access, even though it really, really should be. Now, the first thing you'll notice that I've been having issues with here is the lack of character customization. Most games nowadays that allow for full character customization, like Ark, Neverwinter, even Elder Scrolls, everything like that, allow for detailed changes to your character. What they have here reminds me heavily of stuff like old EverQuest, like classic EverQuest, where you have your choice of 3 faces, your choice of 5 hairs, you have a drop down for hair color instead of like a slider, and you get to pick what you want. Even games like Ark have actually detailed character customization where you can change like the physique. Now, I'm not saying it needs to be that detailed, but at least a couple sliders for like, how big do you want your nose to be? How big do you want your head to be? That would be a nice change from giving you like a selection of 3 faces. It's kind of ridiculous how little the character customization is. Now, another thing is, and you'll notice in the video that's really, really, really sped up because this took me a while because I was trying to figure out what these were. What do these skills actually mean or translate into in the actual game? It does not tell you at all anywhere in the game what these skills translate into and what you need for them. So before you even start playing this game, you have to look up on the very sparse wiki as to what these actually give you and what you need them for. And unfortunately, there is absolutely no way to start this game in a even 2-player setting where you can actually start building anything other than maybe a container to hold your stuff in. And that brings me to another point that I will get to later. Now, the loading screen times actually aren't that bad. It only takes about 1.5 minutes to load into the game the first time. This is the first time ever running the game, and this is running in real time. I even have a little counter at the bottom doing a time code check. One thing I didn't like about the loading screen is that it didn't give you any sort of information as to how long it's going to take. Like, it has the terraforming changes, 5 out of 9, but it doesn't give you any kind of progress bar. Even something simple like a chunked progress bar that says, hey, this is what we're at, this is how many stages we have to go. Even something as simple as that would have made knowing how long it's going to take to load a lot better. What I was tempted to do, because I'm used to, randomly generated worlds taking forever to load because they're generating a world, the exception being Minecraft, where it generates just a small chunk and then builds as you go. Games like this build the entire world or island or whatever in one sitting and then just display you certain chunks. Case in point, things like Dwarf Fortress. But even that has a little progress bar saying, hey, this is how long it's going to take. This doesn't. Next up on the chopping block is controls. And by that, I mean the control button. Don't push it unless you know what you're doing, which unfortunately for me happens to be my talk button for Vent and TeamSpeak. So when I'm on comms with Björkna trying to play this game, because we were trying to make a long play series of Life is Feudal, I kind of kept pressing the control button so that I could talk to him, and I couldn't figure it. Didn't click soon enough that was what was making my mouse unlock from the game, and I actually had to change my talk button because the game does not let you rebind that specific key. It has to be the control button. And unfortunately, it works with both control buttons. Whereas most games will differentiate between left control and right control, both are just control. Now, on top of that, put into the fact that most games, like if you're playing Ark or Rust or anything like that, the use command is just walk up to it and either press E or F. This game, you walk up to it, you have to press Control to release your mouse cursor for most actions. Some of them you can do just by clicking on it. And then you have to right-click the object, select what you want to do, even though what you want to do should be the default option, like chop down a tree. No, the default option is pick leaves or whatever, pick a stick. Now, I will give it a little bit of leeway because the basis of this game is a little bit more complicated than, say, Ark, where you just select what you want to build and then place it. Although it kind of also isn't, because you also do that just with a little bit more detail and pinpoint precision, being that it brings up a little menu that you can use, that you can move things forward, back, left, and right, instead of just hoping it snaps to a grid or something. And now we get to the heart of the gameplay, which is crafting and making cities. Now, unfortunately, this game requires you, in all manners, to at least have 10 active people. The reason for this is that no one person can build everything. They try and do that way, and they have kind of a button in the game that lets you raise the maximum skill cap to where you should be able to, but that would take you literally years to get your skill to the point where you can make everything. No. Like, maybe two or three people, maybe 4 should be able to do it, but the only problem is you're still going to need 10. It doesn't matter. You're still going to need 10 people, because this game has a requirement where you cannot claim land even on your own server without 10 people signing a charter, which just seems frankly completely ridiculous that it would require that. Maybe for a full-fledged server, or maybe some kind of server administration option to lower it to be able to make it however many people you want, or raise it to however many people you want. But no, the minimum requirement is 10. Everything is 10. To make a guild, you need 10. To make a city, you need 10. To make a entire country, you need 10. That's just ridiculous. Just let whoever's running the server manage how many people is required for each stage. Now, I mentioned that I would be getting to something a little bit later, and here's where it is. To craft anything in the game that has any sort of meaning, like a building or even just a fence, yes, a stick fence, requires you to have a full blacksmith setup. Yeah, okay, here's the problem with that. I can walk outside, grab some vines off the tree, grab some sticks, and make a fence. I don't need a blacksmith setup to be able to make a stick fence. That's all we wanted to do. Our entire goal was to make a little camp and surround it with a stick fence. We could not complete that in the 7.5 hours that we were playing this game. We spent 7 hours trying to figure out how we could build a fence before we realized that it required us to grind out the skills to make a blacksmith and farm all of the materials to make a full blacksmith shop before we could even make a stick fence. It required stone, it required iron. Why do you require iron before you're making sticks? That just doesn't make sense to me at all. And last but not least, the grinding time. Yes, this is definitely a grinder game, where in other games you can do things in a matter of hours, and the only difference is you actually have to go out and find the materials. This game is more of a sit down, hunker down, stay where you are, and mash your face against a button for a couple days before you can get to the end game. It has very, very unnecessary time extension in the grinding, and I don't know how anybody does it. But I will do a time accelerated clip here just to show you how long it took me before I could even make the next step in logging so that I could make the fence before we realized that I required iron and a blacksmith and just gave up. So my final verdict for Life is Feudal, before I do a part 2, if they fix anything and make it a little bit more player friendly, is going to be, if you have less than 10 friends that want to play Life is Feudal, stay the hell away from it. If you do have 10 or more friends that would like to play this game, it actually seems like a lot of fun, and you might actually get a lot done, and you might actually be able to play the game. But again, that requires 10 cooperative people to be online at the same time as everybody else. So until part 2, Life is Feudal is a hold for me. Okay.